Welcome back to Public Affairs on Peach. This morning we're talking about surviving sex abuse, and our next guest did just that. In her book, From Foster Care to Fabulous, Capri Cruz writes about her experience in foster care and the betrayal she met when her own father moved her back into an abusive situation with her grandfather. Capri is here with us this morning. Good to have you here.
Hi, thank you.
Boy, explain this one to us. You were in and out of foster care throughout your childhood. Your grandfather abused you.
Yes.
When your grandfather abused you, who did you go to? Who did you eventually tell that story to?
During the time I was I was 13 to 15, and I didn't tell anyone. I withdrew. I became a victim, and because I didn't have a family support system, I had just come out of foster care, I didn't know my relatives, I really didn't have anybody to talk to, so I didn't speak to anybody.
What was it like for you, living in that situation?
During that time at 13 to 15, I don't think that I was my mental faculties weren't as developed as
maybe
a regular.
Not aware so much of what was happening and maybe the damage that it was doing to you.
Yeah, I think as a victim at that time, I knew instinctually this is wrong. There was a fear that was in me. I feared him. I feared the environment. I feared the home. But because I didn't have anybody to go to, I didn't have a support system. There was no outlet. It just never really crossed my mind to go to a police officer or a clergyman, or, you know, I didn't have access to those people. I just went to school, and then when I came home, he locked me in the home for a couple hours till my grandmother came home. So I didn't really have any outlets.
Did you ever tell your father what was happening?
I don't believe I did, no. I didn't have a trusting relationship with him. I didn't have any relationship with him, really. He went and removed me from foster care, dropped me off at my grandfather's house, which was in Queens, New York. He lived in the city and then moved to Brooklyn.
Why did he take you out of foster care?
I don't know. I didn't have regular conversations with him, and the conversations that I did have would be, I would be on the phone with him like this, and my grandfather would be sitting right there staring at me, intimidating me as a child, as a victim. So there was no communication.
And that is a pattern that we know that sexual predators do,
yes,
right? They like to keep control of you and intimidate you by fear.
Yeah.
Have you ever confronted your grandfather about what he did to you?
No, I didn't. I ran away, and I never saw him again until my father was on his deathbed. And well, I saw him one time when my father was trying to recoup me from running away. The next time was when my father was passing away, and I had nothing to say to him at that time.
How do you feel about it now?
He's now passed away, and you know, thankfully I was not one of those people that was completely devastated by the molestation. It didn't haunt me. I ran away, I broke free, I lived on the streets, became homeless, lived with friends, and went back into foster care to finish high school, because as you can imagine, with that type of lifestyle, you're probably going to drop out of high school. You just don't have the system, and you know, I just healed. I had to heal for myself.
Do you regret not saying anything to him or confronting him about it? Or is it something where you basically over time have found kind of peace and serenity in your own life and moved past that pain? Absolutely,
because with this type of lifestyle, not just foster care per se, but the things that are indicative of a child's life, if they happen to experience some type of in and out of foster care systems, in and out of their own biological families' homes. When you live a life like that, you oftentimes don't really have the regular relationships as normal, you know, regular people, normal people, whatever we want to call them, healthy people do. And so for me, I found God, and God was my savior, and I just gave everything to him. I said, I don't have to carry that. I don't have to carry, you know, the burdens of the shame and the guilt, because they're not mine. I'm a victim. And knowing that I was a victim, I was re-empowered through his word, and I just decided to create who I wanted to become, but it was a long process.
It is, and it's a struggling process too, to eventually come to this point. A lot of soul searching and a lot of self-discovery, right? And I'm assuming some counseling.
Oh,
right?
absolutely. You know, it may sound like it's so easy the way I'm describing it, but the journey was not. I didn't have an inner awakening until I was 37.
Wow.
So until I was 37, I joined the military immediately after graduating high school, and I thought I was running to my freedom, and then I realized, you know, there really is no freedom in the military.
You have to face it. You've
Yeah.
got to face the issues.
And so
You can bury
I
them
was-
deep, but they're eventually going to surface.
Yeah. And so I just started going to college for mental health counseling, and you know, I'm working on my PhD now, so it was a continuous journey until I was 37 years old.
What do you have to say to other people out there who may have been victims of sex abuse out there, and who may be adults now, but
Yeah.
may reflect back on a time when they were victims of sex abuse? But also, how do you get young children to come forward, or even young women? You were 13 at the time, in and out of foster care. How do you get a 13, 14, 15-year-old girl to come forward in that situation and say,
Right.
I'm being abused?
You don't actually get them to come forward. You have to build a trusting relationship with them. And so they need mentorship. If they don't have family support system, they need a teacher or someone in the church or someone in their community. We have to open our eyes and see these children. They're not going to find us. We have to kind of find them, because they're there, but there's so much fear there. You know, I remember fearing that if I had said anything, I was fearful my grandfather was going to rape me. He was already molesting me, but he hadn't raped me. So I didn't want to say anything. I was like, it could get worse.
Right.
And so we just have to build a trusting relationship, and that's how that comes out. For me, I think every foster child needs to go to counseling, because that's an opportunity for that relationship to be built. They may not have another outlet.
And you know, I say this to people all the time, one of the biggest misconceptions out there is that a stranger is the biggest danger to children. And I think anyone who's ever around abuse is that we always say, no, that's not the case, because typically when someone is molested or they are raped, it is usually by somebody they know.
Yeah.
It is usually by someone who has contact with your child on a regular basis in order to gain that trust.
Absolutely, yeah. I was molested a time before my grandfather, and I have vague memories of it, but it was through this lady I was living with. I wasn't in foster care yet, but I was living with my grandmother, and I'd moved with this other lady. I'd ran away from my grandmother also, and it was one of her friends. So it's people that we have close proximity to in some shape or form.
All right. I love it. Capri, thanks for
you.
coming and sharing your story.
Absolutely.
Here is the book right here, From Foster Care to Fabulous.
Yeah, that's right.
It's a great story of hope
Yeah.
and serenity, and hopefully somebody out there will show them that they too can find peace even after a terrifying story of abuse.
And they just need, the light is already in them.
Right.
It's just darkened by all this external stuff, and we just need to let them know.
Right.
How
Thank
to
you.
do it.
Thank you for sharing your
Absolutely.
story. Well, what if your pastor controlled everything from your finances to even your sex life? Coming up next, why that may be more common than you think. Stay with us.